Okay, so thousands of years ago, humanity kicked off a massive quest for immortality. Today, in this explainer, we're diving into a story so unbelievably ancient that it actually predates the Bible, it predates Homer's epics, yet the core obsession of this story, it's something every single one of us still grapples with today. I'm talking about the absolute, terrifying inevitability of death. Back in 1916, the famous poet Rainer Maria Rilke got his hands on an early translation of this epic, and he was just instantly intoxicated by it. He enthusiastically called it stupendous because he completely understood its universal hook. It's that profound, deeply human dread of dying. To Rilke, this was first and foremost the ultimate epic about the fear of death. But that really brings up a fascinating mystery for us to explore. How exactly did a shattered, fragmented story from ancient Mesopotamia manage to survive utter oblivion and speak so directly to our own modern anxieties? Well, the answer involves an epic hero from the absolute dawn of civilization and a self-taught genius from Victorian England. Section 1. The oldest story ever told. We're starting off literally in the dirt. The physical origin of this masterpiece is a fragmented cuneiform clay tablet that had to be physically rescued from the earth. Millennia ago, ancient Mesopotamian administrators and poets would actually inscribe these sort of cushion-shaped rectangles of clay using tiny wedge-shaped characters. But as empires fell, the clay shattered, and this incredible story was completely lost to human memory. Section 2. A Scholar's Great Discovery. To understand how we can even read this today, we have to look at the blazing, though completely tragic, life of George Smith. Born into a working-class Victorian family in 1840, Smith barely had any formal education. He was actually a banknote engraving apprentice at 14. But he was just so obsessed with Assyrian history that he spent his lunch breaks at the British Museum studying cuneiform. By 1861, his sheer talent got him a gig sorting clay fragments at night. Then, in 1872, he absolutely stunned the world by translating the Great Flood Tablet. But tragically, just 4 years later, he died of dysentery in Aleppo at the young age of 36. But man, Smith's passion was just unmatched. When he finally cracked that flood story in 1872, which turned out to be the 11th tablet of the Gilgamesh epic, he was so overwhelmed with excitement that he literally started stripping off his clothes and running around the room shouting in sheer delight. I mean, it's just a fantastic, hilarious testament to the absolute thrill of discovery. Section 3. Piecing Together Broken Clay. Reviving this ancient epic wasn't easy, though. It was a painstaking puzzle of putting broken clay back together. When you read modern translations today, you'll often see specific typographical marks, like a sequence of 3 small dots. These are used to visually show us just how fragmentary history really is. So, whenever you come across these ellipses in the text, you are essentially staring at a physical hole in the clay. It represents a tiny piece of the story that's been lost to time, damaged, or maybe the symbols just can't be deciphered yet. And when an entire line is missing or undeciphered, well, that void in the narrative expands into a much longer sequence of dots. It really serves as a stark reminder of how incredibly fragile this 4,000-year-old text is. The story is literally riddled with holes, which honestly makes George Smith's foundational work all the more mind-blowing. Section 4. The Hero and His Friend. Now, let's step into the epic itself and meet our main guys. We have the mighty King Gilgamesh of Uruk, a powerful, semi-divine ruler, and he's completely inseparable from his companion, Enkidu. Together, they take on these legendary, mythic beasts and perform all sorts of glorious deeds. Their dynamic is fascinating because it contrasts 2 massive forces. You've got Gilgamesh representing civilization, he's got the power, the wealth, he loves carnal pleasures, and on the flip side, you have Enkidu representing savagery. He's this wild man, raised by gazelles, completely in tune with nature, but absolutely equal to the king in pure strength. It's an unlikely friendship that united 2 fearless heroes who honestly thought their actions made them invincible. Section 5. The Quest for Eternal Life. But that illusion of invincibility is totally shattered when Enkidu suddenly falls ill and suffers a terrifying, agonizing death. Gilgamesh is suddenly forced to stare down his own inevitable end. He's absolutely terrified, and he utters these chilling words. "The Snatcher has taken hold of my flesh. In my bedroom, death dwells, and wherever I set foot, there too is death." The reality of mortality just destroys his whole worldview. Driven by this deep, universal dread, Gilgamesh goes on a frantic and ultimately futile quest to somehow outsmart death. He's so afraid he literally abandons his mighty kingdom. He travels across the wilderness to the ends of the earth. He crosses the lethal waters of death and tracks down Utnapishtim, this guy who survived the Great Flood and actually got immortality. But spoiler alert, Gilgamesh fails. He doesn't get the secret to eternal youth. He has to learn the really hard way that human days are strictly numbered. Section 6. The meaning of immortality. And that brings us to the really profound realization at the heart of both these parallel stories. Both of these men face the absolute certainty of death, but they both kind of conquered it through their legacies. Gilgamesh couldn't live forever, but he built a mythic legacy by restoring the Great Walls of Uruk and leaving behind this incredible, enduring story. And George Smith? He built a historical legacy by literally rescuing that story from the dirt. Even though Smith died way too young, his brilliant work brought Gilgamesh back to life for all of us today. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with the exact same question that haunted King Gilgamesh 4,000 years ago, and the very same drive that made George Smith strip off his clothes in the British Museum out of pure joy for his work. Knowing for a fact that your days are numbered, what will your legacy be long after you're gone? How will you be remembered? It's definitely something to think about.